everybody, this is Gatsat for the Sad Truth. I'd like to add today a few comments to the clip that I posted yesterday regarding Brexit. Specifically, what I wanted to focus on today is this idea that some folks are floating around that another referendum should be held. This is, literally roughly 24 hours after the people had supposedly spoken in the last referendum, right? So they didn't wait a year, 5 years, 10 years, a generation. 24 hours after the last tallies were made, people are saying, well, we need to go back and ask the people. And when I posted a tweet stating that, this is just breathtaking how anti-democratic it is, then of course you get a bunch of folks who then respond that they are surprised that I would consider it anti-democratic. Now, let me just state, I'm Canadian. I'm not somebody who plays in the stock market, so it's not as though I'm going to gain any, arbitrage by playing the markets, depending on whether Britain stays in or out of the European Union. I have absolutely no dog in this fight. I speak from a position of general principles. I really have absolutely no stake in this issue. And so to the extent that I'm weighing in and to the extent that people care about my opinion, know that it is coming from as honest a place as one can come from, since by definition, I have no stake in the issue. Now, the United States, I think it's part of the Fifth Amendment of the US Constitution, if I'm not mistaken, has a double jeopardy clause as part of its justice system, right? When you put somebody on trial, both sides of the aisle, the prosecutor and the defense team, present their best case, and then there you have it, a decision is made. Let's suppose the person is found not guilty. The prosecution doesn't say, well, you know what, clearly the jury must have been made up of old people who were demented. By the way, that's one thing that we're hearing now about the Brexit result, right? That we shouldn't allow all those old people who are borderline on the verge of having dementia be voting for our future. Hey, it was too close a call. We need to have another one. So we make up the rules as we go along until we get the result that we want. But going back to the double jeopardy clause, the prosecution can't say, you know what? In retrospect, I think that the jury was not sufficiently educated about the matter. I think what we need to do is offer them some new evidence, offer them some new details, and then hopefully this time around we'll hold the trial again, and then they'll come to the correct decision, which is that the person was clearly guilty. You could literally find a tape of the guy admitting to the crime, and you couldn't prosecute him again under the double jeopardy clause, precisely because we recognize that there is a process, there's due process, and once that process is complete, then we move on. Otherwise, for every democratic decision that one would make, you could have the losing side argue, well, the other side engaged in fear appeals. That's why, it's just unbelievable what I'm reading, right? I see tweets saying, well, a lot of the people who voted to leave have now regretted their decision. So, it would be wrong to not hold another referendum. This is 24 hours after a very, very long process where both sides spend an inordinate amount of time and effort in trying to convince the populace of their position. And then people spoke. There was a democratic process. Well, no, apparently all the people who voted to leave were deluded, were demented, were Nazi racists, did not recognize the economic impact. And so for the purposes of having a fair democracy, we should go back and ask them again. But this time we'll put two ticks. One tick will be stay in the EU. The other one is please tick here if you are lobotomized, you're a racist Nazi, or you suffer from dementia, because there's absolutely no other reason for you to not vote to stay. So those are your two choices. Very much like how when Saddam Hussein had democratic processes to decide who would become next president, he would win with something like 99.6 50% of the electorate vote. And so there you have it, folks. I don't care who wins here. I really have no vested interest. I would have slept just as well if the stay or leave camp would have won. What I despise is people's dishonesty. There was a very long, arduous process, and one side lost and the other one won. Now, there might be down the road another mechanism by which in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, you can go back to a new generation and ask them to reevaluate. That itself would be, one could argue, strange. Take, for example, the Quebec referendum of 1980 to separate. They lost the separation camp. Then in 1995, when they thought that the demographic realities were in their favor, they went again for a vote. They lost by a very small margin, much smaller than the one that just happened with Brexit, and everybody accepted it and moved on. So have honor, be decent, recognize that there was a democratic process. There was no fighting, there was no mutiny, there was no violence. Fair and square, people went to the ballots, and one side won, one side lost, accepted with honor. That's what democracy is. Have a good weekend, everybody.